Let's talk Tanya for the 3rd of Shevat of a leap year. So, the last few days we've been discussing the value of avodah, of service, which in Chassidus, the idea of service means the idea of using our mind to influence our heart, to actually refine ourselves, to change our emotions. That not only our behavior should be the way it's supposed to, but actually our feelings should also be holy feelings. And with this, the Alter Rebbe, in this chapter, which we're going to learn today, which is chapter 16, the Alter Rebbe is going to give us two important principles in Chasidus Chabad. The words the Alter Rebbe uses is klal gadol. Klal gadol means an important principle, and obviously when the Alter Rebbe says he's giving us an important principle, we should pay attention. And actually, these words only appear 3 times in the entire Tanya and twice in our chapter. So what are the two big principles, important principles the Alter Rebbe gives us in our chapter? The first one the Alter Rebbe says is an important principle in the service of the struggler is to use the mind to influence the heart, to actually change the emotions, to have holy emotions, to have refined emotions, to have love of God, to have reverence for God. And this process is called, by many, it's called the long way, in contrast to the short way, which is a different strategy for how to overcome the animal soul, which we will start learning about in chapter 18 in a few days from now. This is the long way. Why is it called the long way? Because it takes time. Using the mind to influence the heart doesn't happen overnight. It's by changing a person's thought patterns. It's getting used to thinking in a certain way. It's about meditating and contemplating. But ultimately, when a person does so, and a person does so successfully, what you arrive at is a much more practically sustainable position in the battle against the animal soul, because it takes away the edge from the battle. Yes, you're still going to struggle against your animal soul unless you happen to have the soul of a tzaddik, in which case you arrive at a place of perfection where you don't struggle anymore. But the more that I can develop my emotions, and the more that I can develop my excitement, my enthusiasm, my passion, my love, and all of these in a holy way, the easier it'll be for me to battle afterwards my animal soul. That is the first rule. And by the way, this is the essence of what Chabad is all about. We know that we are called Chabad Chasidism. Why are we called Chabad Chasidism? Chabad is Chachma, Bina, and Das, which is the intellectual faculties. Not because we're big intellectuals and we're sitting and we're meditating the entire day and we're divorced from reality or divorced from our feelings. To the contrary, the point of Chabad is that Chabad is based on the idea of using our minds to actually influence our feelings. And once we influence our feelings, the actions follow automatically, because actions are automatic outcome of our feelings. If I feel passionately about something, I will act upon that feeling. That is the first rule. And then we have the second rule. The second klal gadol, the second important rule in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe says is, we all want to do this. We all would like to use our minds to develop feelings and have, blazing, passionate feelings for God, for the Torah, for Judaism, for mitzvahs, for our fellow Jews. However, the Alter Rebbe says, practically speaking, this is not something which is attainable for every single person. The idea of having emotions to the point, we're talking about warm, passionate emotions. This is something which some people do to the level of their soul. It's not possible for them to accomplish. Instead, what everyone can accomplish is what we call cold or intellectual emotions, which is that you contemplate whatever you want to think about. And in this case, we're talking about thinking about God. And at the very least, in the mind, we have an intellectual emotion where our mind says, oh, wow, I should really want to connect to God. And how do I connect to God? Through learning Torah and through doing mitzvahs. So that's an emotion, because the moment that I have a desire, that's already an emotion. The mind is more objective, but it doesn't necessarily translate into this blazing emotion in the heart. And some people might be disturbed by this. I worked so hard. I did the Chabad program, so to say. I'm using my mind. I'm using my Chachma, Bina, and Das, my Chabad. And I don't feel them. I don't feel this incredibly intense emotions. Dr. Rebbe says, relax. Yes, it's important to use the mind to try to create emotions, but if the extent of what's possible for you is to create only these intellectual cold emotions, that also works. That's also enough. And that also does the job. Now, this path, which again we call the long way, is true in general, but it's also true in particular, specifically. In terms of our struggle with the animal soul, if you're struggling in a certain area, you're struggling with a certain mitzvah, for example, or you're struggling not to do a certain avera, the Chabad, the long way path means study about it, learn about it, think about it, The more you study, the more you learn, the more you think, and the more you personalize those thoughts, and the more you try to connect to those ideas, you're going to find that the struggle will become easier and easier. That's the main ideas, the two important principles in chapter 15 and chapter 16. Tomorrow we'll start chapter 17, and with this we will start wrapping up the long way.